The air was thin aboard the Relic ship, stale with centuries of silence and decay. Every footstep echoed down rusted corridors, hollow and sharp. The human mechanic, Ellis, moved with calculated precision, flashlights slicing through the gloom. Dust motes floated like ghosts, disturbed only by his presence. He wasn't here to marvel. He was here to strip what he could before the next crew arrived and claimed the salvage. The vessel was ancient, alien in geometry, angled walls, pulsating veins of dormant power conduits, inscriptions etched deep into the metal like warnings no one could translate. Even so, Ellis had seen enough derelicts to know when one was wrong. This one didn't feel abandoned. It felt buried. He crouched beside a collapsed bulkhead, scanning for viable tech. His scanner pulsed once, then again, before emitting a low hum. Power flickered somewhere beneath. As he turned to trace the signal, he heard it, a rasping breath. Not mechanical. Not static. Living. He froze. The sound repeated, closer this time. He turned slowly, light catching the edge of something organic. There, pinned beneath a half-collapsed support beam, was a creature. Its fur was silver-white, laced with streaks of obsidian and faint pulses of indigo running down its spine. It was massive, easily the size of a hoverbike, maybe larger, but its limbs were twisted unnaturally, crumpled beneath the weight of the beam. Its chest rose and fell in shallow rhythms. Its eyes, pale gold and too intelligent, locked onto his. Ellis reached for his sidearm out of instinct but didn't draw. The thing didn't move. It couldn't. And there was no threat in its eyes. No rage. Only a resigned stillness, like it had already accepted death. He exhaled slowly and stepped closer. Its body was covered in burn marks, half-healed abrasions, and something that looked like plasma scoring. This wasn't an accident. Someone had tried to kill it and failed. Or worse, left it like this intentionally. Ellis circled the wreckage, trying to gauge the weight. The beam was fused to the deck. Lifting it would take more than muscle. He didn't know why he cared. Protocol was clear: recover technology, ignore organic anomalies. But the creature's gaze didn't waver, even when he moved behind it. He pulled out a collapsible jack and started working. The metal groaned under tension. Ellis wiped sweat from his brow and whispered, "This is stupid." But he kept going. With a shudder, the beam shifted, just enough for him to slide a makeshift sled underneath. He reinforced it with salvage thrusters and layered it with insulation to buffer the creature's body. Moving it wouldn't be smooth, but it would be possible. As he gently rolled the beast onto the sled, it let out a low, guttural noise, not pain, but acknowledgement. That made him pause. He looked at it again. Its head weakly turned toward him. Still those eyes watching. Trusting? He pulled an emergency ration from his pack, broke it in half, and offered it. The creature didn't bite, but its nostrils flared. It knew what he was doing. Its tongue flicked out just enough to touch the food. He dropped it gently in front of its mouth and stepped back. The silence returned, but it wasn't empty anymore. Dragging the sled through the tight corridors was brutal. Ellis had to dismantle door frames, rewire dead panels, and recalibrate anti-grav boosts on the fly. Every few meters he checked the creature's pulse, make sure it was still breathing. Each time it was. Barely. He didn't talk much. Just the occasional grunt or muttered curse as sparks flew from rewired panels. Once, after a particularly heavy door nearly crushed him, he looked at the beast and said, "You owe me a drink." It blinked. Once. Halfway back to his ship, a tremor shook the Relic's spine. Something deep shifted. Not a collapse. A heartbeat. Ellis didn't stop. When he finally reached the docking bay, he collapsed beside the sled, lungs burning. He stared at the wolf-like creature beside him. It didn't look like a monster anymore. Just a survivor. He checked his comms. The signal was weak, distorted by the Relic's strange alloy structure, but stable enough to call in his extraction team. He didn't press the button. Instead, he leaned back, staring at the cracked ceiling above. "You're not supposed to be here," he said softly. Neither of us are. The creature made a soft, almost inaudible noise, less growl, more breath. Ellis didn't understand what it meant. But somehow, he felt it agreed. Ellis tightened the straps around the sled, adjusting the distribution of weight. The alien's body was heavier than it looked, dense muscle and unfamiliar anatomy. Every movement strained the salvaged anti-grav unit to its limit. He reinforced it with 2 spare power cores from gutted drones, rerouted manually. It sputtered but held, lifting the sled just enough off the ground to slide without scraping. He checked the creature's vitals with a handheld scanner. Pulse irregular, respiration shallow, but stable. Whatever paralysis had locked its limbs was spreading. Cellular decay along the spine suggested something engineered. Not an injury. A deliberate biological shutdown. He didn't talk this time. Words felt irrelevant. He worked with quiet precision, muscles burning as he dragged the sled into the narrow shaft connecting the ship's outer corridor to the central maintenance access. The route wasn't designed for cargo, much less a semi-conscious predator, but the main passages were too exposed. Too unstable. The slope was tight, uneven. One wheel caught a jagged metal plate. Ellis slipped, slammed his shoulder into the wall, and gritted his teeth as pain flared down his arm. He forced the sled forward. The anti-grav buzzed, power dipping for a moment before recovering. The creature stirred slightly, head shifting in slow protest. "Easy," Ellis muttered, knowing it couldn't respond. They reached a collapsed segment, metal warped by some ancient energy discharge. No way around. He set down his tools and began clearing debris, piece by piece. Sweat coated his skin, stinging his eyes, but he kept working. His exosit's back joint whined under the pressure, gears slipping. Still, he didn't stop. After clearing just enough space, he pushed the sled forward, holding the side with one arm while stabilizing the hover system with the other. The sled scraped the edge. The creature let out a low, pained sound. Not a roar. A rasp. Weak, but conscious. Ellis adjusted the slope controls, shifting the load balance to ease the tension on its back. He didn't know if it mattered. But he did it anyway. The corridor narrowed. Pipes lined the ceiling, some ruptured, leaking stale coolant that clung to his boots. His movement slowed. A tremor passed through the hull again. He paused. This one was sharper, more focused. Not like settling metal. Like something shifting deliberately. He pressed on. Midway through the corridor, the power in one of the sled's thrusters failed. The craft dipped, listing to one side. He dove, caught the frame before it rolled, and manually corrected the tilt. Sparks flew as he rewired the output to redirect the remaining core. The lights flickered. A panel hissed and blew open, spraying steam into the corridor. It scalded his arm through the suit. He gritted his teeth, knelt by the sled, and jammed the cable deeper into the housing. The anti-grav surged, stabilized. The wolf's eyes blinked slowly, barely focused. He saw something there. Not awareness, but intent. A sliver of will trying to surface through layers of sedation and pain. "You're not giving up," Ellis muttered. "Fine. Neither am I." He dragged the sled into the auxiliary power station, half collapsed, lit only by a sputtering emergency diode. It would do. He set up a temporary support frame, linked it to the sled, and secured the alien into a rest angle to reduce pressure on its spine. He wrapped it in a thermal shield designed for cryopods, modified to accommodate its size. Ellis accessed a basic med drone and reprogrammed it to deliver low doses of anti-inflammatory nanites. He watched the injection enter the creature's neck, its breathing hitching briefly, then slowing. His own arms trembled from exhaustion. Knees burned. He sat down, back against the cracked conduit, fingers tracing the edge of his repair blade without thinking. The alien shifted again. Just barely. Ellis glanced up. Their eyes met. For the first time, the wolf's gaze held something different. Not confusion. Not fear. Recognition. A flicker, but it was there. He stood slowly and approached. The creature didn't flinch. He placed his hand on the side of its massive head. The texture of its fur was coarse, singed in places, but warm. Alive. "You're not dead yet," he said softly. "So don't make me carry you for nothing." The creature's eye blinked once. He returned to work. The extraction team would be expecting a report. He didn't send one. Not yet. Not until he knew what this was. He rewired the remaining corridor access panels, patched the sled's power lines, and rerouted life support systems to funnel oxygen through their temporary chamber. Every move calculated. Efficient. Purposeful. This wasn't protocol. It wasn't logical. But logic never pulled anyone from wreckage. Only choice. And Ellis had made his. Ellis calibrated the power flow to stabilize the chamber's ambient levels, watching condensation build along the metal seams. The ship groaned under its own age, but the systems he jump-started were holding, barely. He took a sip of filtered water from his suit's reserve, then turned his attention back to the creature. The alien's body had reacted slightly to the nanites. Not movement, not recovery, but its breathing had deepened, and its eyes no longer looked glassed over. They followed him now, slow, deliberate, aware. He knelt beside it again, this time without hesitation. "You've been under for a long time," he muttered, running diagnostics with the portable scanner. Still no muscle response. Paralysis remained absolute. But the brain activity was climbing, small flickers of stimulation firing across regions that indicated intelligence, memory retention, and an unusual response pattern he couldn't identify. He set the scanner down and sat cross-legged, back against the bulkhead. The silence settled in again, broken only by the hum of recycled air. "I don't know why you're still alive," he said aloud, not expecting an answer. "No food. No movement. No comms ping. Just locked in, like someone wanted to forget you existed." The creature's gaze didn't shift. He leaned forward. "You're not just some animal, are you?" It blinked once. Slow. Intentional. He narrowed his eyes, caught off guard by the certainty that came with that small motion. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't reflex. It understood him. He pulled a ration bar from his satchel, tore it in two, and set half near its mouth. It made no move to eat, but he watched its throat tense slightly, like it wanted to respond but couldn't. He slid it closer. Still nothing. His attention turned to the relic walls around them. The markings weren't decorative. They were logs. A language he didn't recognize, but the structure looked deliberate. Repetitions, timelines, maybe even ranks. It hinted that this wasn't just any vessel. It had significance. Ellis stood, approached the terminal, and bypassed the lockout again. Static flared across the old screen, and for a moment, an image formed. Not clear. Fragments of movement. A figure that looked eerily like the alien wolf, but upright, armored, leading others through a corridor filled with fire. The image cut off, replaced by error code in an alien dialect. He turned, pulse tightening. The creature was watching the screen. "You remember this ship?" The eye blinked again. He returned to his seat, dragging a portable data translator closer. It wouldn't solve everything, but it could pick up base symbols. While he worked, he kept talking. "I knew someone once. He was like you. Quiet. Didn't say much. Just kept going. Saved my life more than once. Never took credit." He paused. The screen blinked again, as if triggered by proximity. Another fragment played, this time, the alien standing over a smaller figure. A human child. Injured. The creature shielding them with its body. A massive blast hit, the screen flared white, and the feed cut. Ellis stared in silence. He looked back at the creature. "You protected one of us." The creature's eye twitched. "You got punished for it." Silence again. Heavy. Certain. He swallowed, jaw clenched. "So they left you here. Locked you in your own body. Buried you with this ship like trash." The lights dimmed. Power surged somewhere upstream. He ignored it. "You saved a human. And now I'm here, pulling your ass out of another wreck." He stood, pacing now, blood running hot. This isn't coincidence. He opened his portable comms. A flicker of connection. Static-laced, intermittent. He could call for help. Extract the alien. Hand it off to a team of xenobiologists, and never think about it again. His thumb hovered over the transmitter. He didn't press it. Instead, he turned back and connected a neuromonitor to the creature's head. The readings jumped, not randomly. They were forming rhythmic pulses. Not language, but pattern. A primitive signal, data encoded in waveform. Attempted communication. He tapped into it, set a rudimentary translator to work. It struggled, but parsed enough to show one word repeating in varied intervals. Warning. His stomach tightened. The alien wasn't just remembering. It was trying to say something. Something dangerous. He sat beside it, lowered his voice. You're not the only thing left on this ship, are you? The lights flickered again. Another tremor rattled the floor beneath them. The readings on the neuromonitor spiked. The creature's eye closed briefly, then opened, wider than before. Focused. Sharp. Not a plea. A demand? Ellis didn't wait for another tremor. He pulled the monitor from the creature's head and stuffed it into his pack, checking the seals on the sled and rechecking the energy cores. The alien's warning pulsed in his skull like a memory not his own, impossible to ignore. Something else was inside the ship, something the creature feared enough to push through its paralysis just to send a message. That wasn't instinct. That was intent honed by experience. He rerouted power from the support systems into the thruster coils beneath the sled, bypassing safeties to increase torque. The walls around him groaned louder than before. It wasn't structural failure. The pattern had rhythm, like breath. Or footsteps. Measured and growing closer. Ellis jammed his shoulder under a bent pipe that blocked the exit, using a powered brace to force it aside. Sparks erupted from the weld as it gave way. The moment the path cleared, he pushed the sled forward, pulse rising with every meter. The creature's eyes remained fixed on the corridor ahead. It wasn't panic. It was anticipation. As they rounded the bend, the temperature dropped. Frost spread across the walls, curling like veins. A hum vibrated under the floor, too low for machines, too organic to be coincidence. His grip tightened on the handle. Something ancient had awakened, and it had never intended to be disturbed. A burst of static exploded in his ear from his communicator. Not signal interference. Something was jamming it. He ripped the receiver off his collar. This wasn't the time for calls. He needed focus. He passed the chamber where he'd first found the creature. Now it was darker, suffocating. The air shimmered near the walls, like heat mirages in reverse. The markings that once glowed faintly were pulsing, out of sync with the ship's lights. They were reacting to something alive. As he dragged the sled deeper toward the auxiliary shuttle dock, he saw what had once been a sealed corridor now cracked open, inner walls clawed from the inside. Scorch marks lined the floor in a trail leading toward the engine core. He didn't pause to investigate. Every fiber of his instincts screamed the same thing: move. The sled jerked as it crossed into the final stretch, thin beams of red light flickering ahead where emergency beacons still functioned. Just ahead was the docking chamber, an airlock sealed for centuries. Ellis pulled out a charged spike, jammed it into the panel, and forced the cycle. Alarms flashed weakly, but the doors groaned and parted just enough to slip through. He maneuvered the sled inside, sealed the door manually, and activated the chamber's backup pressurization. Then he dropped to one knee and began working the launch override for the small single-use craft docked inside. The vessel was ancient but intact. Pre-fall design. He'd seen one in a museum once, though none operational. The creature's breathing had changed. Still labored, but steadier. The neuromonitor was down, but Ellis didn't need it now. He could read the tension in the alien's posture. The stiffness in its muscles was less absolute. It was fighting to regain movement. Its eyes tracked every motion he made. He prepped the escape vessel, linking its systems to his interface. Launch time, 3 minutes. More than enough, if nothing interfered. Behind him, The door shook violently. A sound tore through the air, not metal on metal, but something lower. A vibration that bypassed the ears and hammered the ribs. He knew without looking that it had found them. Whatever it was. The creature growled, not a warning, but a signal. Ellis turned and saw its claws twitch. A muscle in its back contracted. The paralysis was breaking. Another strike hit the door harder. The edges bent inward, forming a dent shaped like a hand. No flesh, no fingers, just an impression left by force. Whatever was out there hadn't forgotten the creature. It had waited. Ellis drew the plasma cutter from his belt and positioned himself in front of the sled. No bluster. No speeches. If the thing came through, he'd stall it. Just long enough. The creature exhaled once. Deep and deliberate. Then, with agonizing slowness, it moved its foreleg, claws dragging against the sled's frame. Not much, but enough to show it wasn't helpless anymore. The door buckled. Ellis didn't speak. He adjusted his grip, planting his feet. The final warning wasn't in words, but in motion. The creature lifted its head, teeth bared, gold eyes burning with violent memory. Whatever it had once fought, whatever buried horror still hunted the halls of this ship, it had returned. And now, it had two problems. The airlock door cracked, groaning as unseen pressure bowed its frame inward. Ellis didn't move, watching the seams glow faintly from heat or force, or both. Whatever was outside hadn't lost its strength over the centuries. The vibrations rolled through the floor panels, low and even, like something enormous was pacing just beyond the metal. No random movement. No chaos. It was patient. Focused. Intelligent. The escape vessel's systems were counting down. Less than 90 seconds. Ellis checked the charge on his plasma cutter. 2 minutes of continuous arc before depletion. Enough to stall. Not enough to win. Behind him, the alien wolf's claws curled tighter around the sled's edge. The creature's limbs were fighting the last remnants of neural shutdown, tendons pulling against long-dormant resistance. Its breathing shifted, slow and deep like something remembering how to move. Ellis didn't look back. He didn't have to. The tension in the air had changed. A sharp screech split through the metal. A sliver peeled away at the corner of the airlock, exposing darkness beyond. Not void, something moving just beyond sight. Smoke without source. Heat without fire. The air filled with static, prickling skin beneath armor. Ellis aimed the cutter at the opening and ignited the blade, its blue flame crackling in defiance. Then the sound stopped. No rattle, no vibration. Just stillness. A single shape appeared in the gap, long, thin, not organic but not quite mechanical either. It tested the breach like a limb remembering its shape, then withdrew slowly. Ellis narrowed his eyes. It was watching him. Assessing. Not charging. It knew what it wanted and was taking its time. Movement behind him broke the tension. The alien wolf shifted on its own. One leg dragged across the deck, body leaning off the sled. Its claws scraped against the floor, pulling it into a half-crouch. The paralysis hadn't fully cleared, but the creature was upright, unstable but massive, and awake. Ellis didn't say anything. No commands, no support. It wasn't his to guide. Whatever this was, it had begun long before he arrived. He was just a variable that hadn't been accounted for. The door blew inward, torn from its braces and flung against the far wall. Something stepped through, not visible in detail, but felt. A pressure that dimmed the lights and made oxygen taste thin. The structure of its body didn't follow lines, angles that bent and reformed as it moved, but always stayed anchored to a single point, the place where its gaze would be if it had eyes. The wolf pushed forward, limping slightly, standing between Ellis and the breach. Its spine arched, teeth bared, shoulders flared as if daring the thing to step closer. Its breath fogged the air, visible against the unnatural cold. The creature in the doorway paused. No charge. No attack. Only stillness. Then it moved, fast, soundless, direct. Ellis stepped back, blade up, but the wolf struck first. It launched into motion, claws trailing energy as they slashed the air. The force of its strike collided with the thing mid-lunge, creating a concussive blast that shattered nearby panels. Ellis staggered, caught himself on the wall. The alien roared, not in pain, but rage. Not helpless now. Not forgotten. The thing shrieked as its body distorted around the blow, tendrils whipping in all directions. The wolf didn't retreat. It pressed forward, biting, ripping, driving the enemy back toward the breach. For the first time, Ellis saw fear in something that shouldn't have known it. A tendril lashed out, clipping the wolf's leg and forcing it to one side. Ellis didn't hesitate. He surged forward and drove the cutter into the mass's flank. The blade sank deep, meeting resistance, then pushing through with a flash of violent heat. The creature shrieked, recoiling, its form convulsing. It staggered back through the doorway, dragging distorted limbs behind. The wolf limped forward again, gave a final, guttural snarl, and collapsed to one knee as the breach sealed itself behind the retreating thing. Ellis ran to it. The alien was bleeding, not red, but a deep metallic black. It leaned against him, breathing hard, body trembling from exertion. He dragged it back toward the escape pod. The hatch was open, systems still online. Together they collapsed inside, the doors sealing just as the ship groaned with a final, thunderous tremor. Launch protocol engaged. The vessel shook free, pulling away from the dying relic behind. Ellis didn't look back. He sat beside the alien, watching as it lay breathing, battered but alive. This wasn't over. But whatever it had once been, tool, weapon, prisoner, it had chosen to fight again. And now it wasn't alone.